What's up, everybody? Jay here from Tap and Turn Gaming. I know it's been quite some time since you've heard from Derek and I, so I do want to preface this video first off with an apology to all of you. I know we have not uploaded any content in over a year. The reason for that being is just, life kind of gets in the way sometimes. Not going to go into too much detail, but, just a lot going on with Derek and I for the past year. Some good things, some not so good things. So, again, not going to go into details about it, but I do want to apologize to all of you, all of our subscribers, for not uploading any content in such a long time. But on the flip side of that, I do want to thank everybody that stuck it out with us. We do have still almost 2,000 subscribers as of filming this video. So for those of you that stuck it out and stayed subscribed to us while we were not uploading any content for over a year, thank you very much for sticking around with us. With that said, Derek and I have gotten together, and we definitely want to get back into the swing of things on the channel. We want to start uploading regularly again. As of right now, we might do maybe like one video a week to just kind of start things off. We'll see how it goes from there, but I don't want to be too long-winded about it. So again, apologies for being away for so long and not uploading any content for you to consume. But again, thank you to everybody that did stick around with us during that time of hiatus. So, but let's get into today's deck tech, which is obviously going to be for Commander, because that's what we're all about. So today I have an Aryel, Knight of Windgrace. Yeah, let's try that again. Aryel, Knight of Windgrace. Tribal Knights for Commander / EDH. And obviously, our commander is Aryel, Knight of Windgrace. She is a 4-cost 4/4 via 2, a white and a black, for a legendary creature human knight with vigilance. And she has 2 pretty interesting abilities. You can pay 2 and a white and tap her to create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. Or you can pay a black and tap her to tap X untapped knights you control to destroy target creature with power X or less. She's pretty versatile in the fact that we finally have a legendary knight that's black and white with the release of Dominaria. Made me very happy. Made me a very happy person. I've been waiting for a black-white legendary knight for a very long time, and we finally got one in Dominaria. But those 2 abilities are pretty nice, generating tokens and then being able to kill opposing creatures with no color restrictions or anything. And the fact that the knight tokens have vigilance and she herself has vigilance means that you can kind of swing in and then use those abilities in the midst of combat to be able to do stuff. So we'll get into some more synergies as we go down the rest of the deck. But first up, we're going to take a look at our creature base, and I'm going to do a quick little converted mana cost sort right here. And we're going to scroll back down. So we're going to start with the lowest converted mana cost stuff and work our way up to the higher converted mana cost stuff. And we're going to start off with the creatures. So first up we have Dauntless Bodyguard. It's a 1-cost 2/1. When it comes in, choose another creature you control, and then you can sacrifice it to give that creature indestructible until end of turn. So essentially it kind of just jumps in front of removal spells, or you can use it to save, a creature in combat that it's protecting, or being the bodyguard too, essentially. So it's a nice little thing to have. Then we have Knight of Grace and Knight of Malice. They're basically polar opposites of each other and kind of odes to White Knight and Black Knight. So the Knight of Grace is a 2-cost 2/2 with first strike and hexproof from black. Very, very different from protection from black, which is what White Knight would have had back in the day. So the hexproof from black basically means that it dodges spells of that color. It can't be targeted by black spells or abilities your opponents control. And then as long as any player controls a black permanent, that could be us, that could be our opponent. We're a black-white deck, so we might trigger that ourselves. It's very highly likely that we will. It'll get a +1/+0. And the Knight of Malice is, like I said, just basically a polar opposite of that. Apologies for the web page kind of bugging out there for a second. It does that, I guess, with the ads and whatnot. Hopefully it doesn't continue to do that. Next up, we have Knight of the White Orchid. A 2-cost 2/2 with first strike. When he comes in, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you can search your library for a Plains card, put it onto the board, and then shuffle your library. So it ramps us a little bit if we're behind. Then we have Metallic Mimic. In my opinion, a must for any tribal deck. A 2-cost 2/1. That's an artifact. It's colorless, so it can basically go into any deck and not have to worry about any, what colors you're using to cast it. And it comes in, you choose a creature type. Obviously, in this deck, we're going to choose, you guessed it, Knights. And this card is that type in addition to its other types, which is a shapeshifter. And then why we really run it is that each other creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So once we put this down, every Knight that we cast after that comes in a little bit bigger. Then we have Stromgald Crusader and White Shield Crusader. Basically, again, kind of same basis as Knight of Grace and Knight of Malice. They're like polar opposites of one another. So the Stromgald is a double black for a 2/1. Protection from white, pay a black, it gains flying, pay 2 black, it gets a +1/+0. And then White Shield Crusader is essentially the same exact thing, just white and protection from black with the same abilities, but you use white mana to activate them. Alright, moving on into the CMC3 stuff, we have Benelish Marshal. Triple white for a 3/3. Other creatures you control get +1/+1, so he's basically a glorious anthem for all your other creatures. Not bad at all. We have Fiend Slayer Paladin, a 2/2 for 3 with first strike and lifelink, and he can't be the target of black or red spells your opponents control. Kind of almost hexproof from those colors, but not quite. Then we have Hakan, Stromgald Scourge, who is a very, very integral part of the deck. Well, maybe not integral, but having him around is very, very nice. So he's a 3/3 for 3. And you can only play him from your graveyard, which may seem like a downside, but we have stuff in the deck specifically just so we can get him into the graveyard through various means. And as long as he is in play, you may play Knight cards from your graveyard, which is why we really, really like him. Being able to cast our creatures repeatedly from the graveyard after they die, either in combat or to removal, being able to just recast them from the yard makes, your creatures in the graveyard like an extension of your hand. So that's very, very nice. Then when he dies, you lose 2 life. Whatever. I'll gladly lose 2 life to be able to just cast him again and then keep recurring all of my creatures. And we can also use some of our spells to this effect too, and we'll get into that once we get to them. Then we have Knight Exemplar, a 2/2 for 3 with first strike that gives your other Knights +1/+1 and indestructible. So not really much to say about that. Pretty self-explanatory. Next we have Mentor of the Meek, who's actually not a knight, but he, is a very good card to have in a deck with creatures with such low power, just right out of the gate. So whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters the board under your control, you may pay 1 generic. If you do, draw a card. So this guy does basically become useless to you if you have any of your Anthem effects out on the board. But if you haven't drawn into any of those, I think we might have a handful of them in the deck. You know, if you have them out, great, your guys are getting bigger. If you don't and you have this out, you can draw some extra cards. So that's always nice, being able to draw extra cards. See, there goes the web page again, glitching out. Apologies for that. Next we have Mirren Crusader, a 2/2 for 3 with double strike, protection from black and from green. Pretty self-explanatory there. Then we have Paladin and Vec, a 2/2 for 3 with first strike, protection from black and from red. Phyrexian Crusader, a 2/2 for 3 with first strike, protection from red and from white, and infect. So I guess you kind of have a little bit of an alternate win condition there. If you're able to smash your opponent in the face with this guy 5 times, you can infect them out. Maybe a little bit less if you have an Anthem effect out, but you know, you're probably not going to be able to connect with this guy that many times, but if you do, great. You just infected somebody out of the game. So kind of an alternate win condition, but not something to rely on. Next we have our 4 mana cost stuff, 4 CMC here. We have Elenda the Dusk Rose. She's a 1/1 for 4, which might seem pretty weak, but she has some pretty nice abilities. So she has lifelink, which is nice. Whenever another creature dies, we can put a 1/1 counter on her, and that's any creature. Our creatures, our opponent's creatures, doesn't matter who they belong to. Every time a creature dies, she gets bigger. And then when she dies, you create X 1/1 white vampire creature tokens with lifelink, where X is her power. So if she sticks around on the board for a while and gets really big, and then she dies, you just generated yourself a nice little token army. The fact that the tokens aren't knights kind of bother me a little bit from a flavor standpoint, but she herself is a knight, so she just skidded by and made it into the deck. Next we have Hero Bladehold. Speaking of creature tokens, it's a 3/4 for 4 with Battle Cry, so it gives all your other attacking creatures +1/+0. And whenever it attacks, you put 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Then we have the Kinsbale Cavalier, a 2/2 for 4 that gives knight creatures you control double strike. Not much to say about that. Next we have Audric, Master Tactician, a human soldier, not a knight, but for what he does, I felt like he kind of deserved a spot in the deck. So he's got first strike, which is nice. A lot of our creatures have first strike. But when he and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. So essentially you control the combat step if you trigger that ability. So you could be like, well, I'm going to swing with all these guys and Audric, and you're not going to block at all. And I'm just going to smash you in the face for a lot of damage. Or you're going to use this guy to block this guy so I can kill it and get it off the board. He is indeed the Master Tactician, allowing you to control the combat phase. Next we have Valiant Knight, a 3/4 for 4. Gives your other knights +1/+1. Then you can pay 3 and 2 white. Knights you control gain double strike until end of turn. So it's kind of just a redundancy with the Kinsbale Cavalier having ways to give our stuff double strike. Then we have Knight Captain of Eos, a 2/2 for 5. When he comes in, he brings 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with him. And then you can pay a white and sacrifice a soldier to fog, basically. It's nice that we have this and some of the other cards in the deck that generate a soldier token so that we can keep using that ability. We're not just reliant on the 2 soldiers that he brings himself. Then we have the Markov Dread Knight, a 3/3 for 5 with flying. You can pay 2 and a black to discard a card to put 2 1/1 counters on him. That might seem pretty jank on paper, and I would agree with you that it is. But in this deck, we want ways to be able to get Hakan into the graveyard if we happen to draw him over the course of the game. So this gives us access to be able to dump him into the yard if we happen to draw him. And then this gets bigger when we do that, so it's not terrible in this deck. Then we have Pentarch Paladin, a 3/3 for 5 with flanking, classic ability. But when he comes in, we choose a color, and then we can pay 2 white and tap him to destroy target permanent of the chosen color. So being able to nuke anything of the color we choose is pretty nice. Moving on down, we got Thalia's Lancers, a 4/4 for 5 with first strike. When it comes in, search your library for a legendary card, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle. So essentially, I don't think we have any legendary. Well, actually, it would tutor up Planeswalkers, because Planeswalkers have been eroded to legendary Planeswalkers. So you could use this to tutor up any of the Planeswalkers you have, or any of the other legendary creatures we have in the deck. And we have Vona, Butcher of Magan, a 4/4 for 5 with Vigilance and Lifelink, which is pretty nice. Nice 2 abilities to have on a 4/4 body. Then we can tap it, pay 7 life to destroy target non-land permanent. Activate this ability only during your turn. That may seem like a pretty hefty cost to pay, 7 life to destroy a non-land permanent. But the fact that this has lifelink and some of our other stuff in the deck also has lifelink, and then we have ways to give our entire team lifelink, that'll help offset that cost. But 7 life to destroy any non-land permanent that might be, just putting a hampering on your game plan or just giving you a real bad headache. It's a pretty, it's a cost that I would be willing to pay, and I'm sure a lot of you would as well. Moving on, we got Lena, Selfless Champion, a 3/3 for 6, which might seem pretty weak, but her abilities are what really makes her shine. So when she enters the battlefield, you create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each non-token creature you control. So if you have a bunch of guys on the board that aren't tokens, she's going to bring that many 1/1 tokens when she comes in. And they're also soldiers, so those can be fuel to your Knight Captain of Eos fire. And then you can also sacrifice her. Creatures you control with power less than her power gain indestructible until end of turn. So being able to sacrifice that in a pinch to maybe dodge a board wipe, as long as the creatures that you want to save have less power than her, they'll stick around. Then lastly, we have the Sun Titan, 6/6 for 6 with Vigilance. When he comes in or attacks, you can return a permanent card with convert a mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we have a lot of creatures in our deck that are 3 CMC or lower, but also that works for our artifacts and enchantments and things of that nature that are also 3 CMC or less. Alright, so that is our creature package. Next up, we're going to take a look at our spells, our instants, and sorceries, and we'll start with the instants. And first up is Nameless Inversion. So I did allude to it earlier, how we can utilize some of our spells with Hakan. This is one of those spells, so it's a 2-cost black tribal instant shapeshifter with Changeling. This card is every creature type at all times. So if it's all creature types at all times, that means it's a knight. And when we cast it, we can give something a +3, -3, and then it'll go to our graveyard. Well, guess what? If Hakan is on the board, we can keep casting this instant from our graveyard over and over and over for as long as we have mana to do so. So being able to reuse this pretty cheap removal spell is pretty nice, to be able to just do it over and over and over as long as Hakan is out. Then we have Anguished Unmaking, a black and white instant. 1, a white and a black to exile target non-land permanent. You lose 3 life. 3 life is a pretty acceptable price to pay to exile any non-land permanent. Then we have Crib Swap, another tribal instant shapeshifter with Changeling, so we can also cast this from our graveyard with Hakan. And then we can exile target creature its controller creates a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature with Changeling. Whatever. They get a 1/1 with Changeling. Big deal. We just exiled one of their biggest threats, and then we can reuse it from the graveyard later on if we have Hakan out. Return to Dust. We can exile an artifact or enchantment, and if we cast the spell during our main phase, we can exile one other artifact or enchantment. And then Utter End. Just exile target non-land permanent for 2, a white and a black. So that's our instance package. Next we'll take a look at our sorcery package. We have Gift of Estates, 1 and a white to search our library for up to 3 plains cards, reveal them and put them in our hand, and then shuffle if an opponent controls more lands than us. So it's just another way for us to ramp a little bit if we're behind. The colors of white and black don't offer you much in the means of mana ramp, so a lot of our artifacts are kind of in there to fill that role to ramp our mana a little bit. But having this in there as well, if we happen to fall behind, to get up to 3 plains cards in our hand is pretty nice. Then we have Buried Alive. Search your library for 3 creature cards, put them in your graveyard, then shuffle your library. Another way for us to basically get Hakan in the graveyard from our library. Vindicate. Destroy target permanent. Nothing to really say about there. Then we have Damnation and Wrath of God, our 2 board wipes for us. I know Damnation is pretty expensive at $25. It was a lot more expensive before it got reprinted. But, you could easily swap this out with any cheaper black board wipe if you don't have access to $25 or an actual Damnation. There's a bunch of other black board wipes that you could run over this, but I chose to run it just because I have access to one. And then obviously Wrath of God, not too expensive of a card, but, does the same thing as Damnation, and it costs, 4. So it's a lot cheaper than most board wipes that you would find. Then we have Demonic Collusion, just a tutor spell for us, but what we like about this is that we can buy it back by discarding 2 cards. So we could, cast this, search our library for a card, and then buy it back and discard Hakan if he happens to be in our hand. So the buyback on this, for us in this deck, isn't really too big of a price to pay. Then another tutor here in Final Parting. We can search for 2 cards from our library, put one into our graveyard and the other into our hand, and then shuffle. Then lastly, another board wipe for us, more versatile board wipe, Austere Command. We can choose to blow up all artifacts or all enchantments, or all creatures with CMC 3 or less, or all creatures with CMC 4 or greater. So those are our spell packages, our instants and sorceries. Next up, we'll take a look at our artifacts. First up, we have Soul Ring. It's Soul Ring. Do I really need to explain why it's in the deck? I don't think I do. Orzhov Signet, another mana rock for us. We're going to kind of skip over a couple things just to look at the mana rocks. We get Darksteel Ingot, Orzhov Cluestone, and Orzhov Keyrune. Those are just our mana rock artifacts to get a little bit of a ramp on. Speaking of ramp, actually, Sword of the Animist will also ramp us. It's a 2-cost equipment. It costs 2 to equip. Gives the equipped creature +1/+1, but why we like it is whenever the equipped creature attacks, we can rip a basic land out of our deck and put it onto the board tapped. So it's pretty nice to have. Darksteel Plate, because what knight would charge into battle without wearing a suit of armor, am I right? So the Darksteel Plate costs 3 and 2 to equip. It itself is indestructible, and the equipped creature is indestructible. Sigiled Sword of Valoron, which is actually one of my more favorite cards from the 2019 core set, because I love knights so much. And this is just like a knight equipment, which makes me very happy. So costs 3 and 3 to equip. Gives the equipped creature +2/+0 vigilance and makes it a knight in addition to its other types. That's not really going to matter too much to us unless we're putting it on one of like the 2 or 3 creatures in the deck that aren't knights. But why we like it is whenever equipped creature attacks, you create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance that's attacking. So it pumps out creature tokens. So that's why we like it. Then we have the Sword of Fire and Ice and Sword of Light and Shadow. I know these are very expensive cards. The only reason I put them in the deck is because I happen to have access to a copy of each of these. And, the abilities on them are just great. Fire and Ice lets you, shock and draw a card if the equipped creature hits, and then Sword of Light and Shadow gains you 3 life and lets you take a creature back from your yard. You could easily swap these out with much, much cheaper cards. I'm sure you could find some very thematic equipments if you wanted to replace them with other equipments. Because I know they're very expensive. Light and Shadow being $31 and Fire and Ice being almost $55. So they're not cheap cards, but, I put them in the deck because I have access to them. If you don't have access to them and don't want to pay $55 or $32 for these cards, there's definitely other cards you could play over these. Door of Destinies, because it's basically a must for any tribal deck. It costs 4 to play. When it comes in, you choose a creature type. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen type, put a charge counter on this. So this also works for our Changeling instance, Nameless Inversion and Crib Swap, which is pretty sweet. Synergizes very nice with those. And creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each charge counter on this. And then lastly, Vanquisher's Banner, a 5-cost artifact that you choose a creature type when it comes in. Knights for this deck, obviously, again. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, which is nice, another Anthem effect. But why we really like it is whenever we cast a creature spell of the chosen type, we draw a card. So being able to draw cards is very, very powerful. Then we're going to take a look at our enchantments. First up, we have Call the Bloodline, 2-cost enchantment where you can pay a generic and discard a card to put a 1/1 black vampire knight creature token with lifelink onto the battlefield. Activate this ability only once each turn. That kind of stinks that you can only do it once each turn, but why we like it is because it gives us another outlet to discard Hakan if he happens to be in our hand if we drew into him. And, the tokens that it generates are knights, so it kind of just fit the theme. Oversold Cemetery for a little bit of recursion if we maybe don't have Hakan online. As long as we have 4 or more creature cards in our graveyard, we can return one from our graveyard to our hand on our upkeep. Always Watching, non-token creatures we control get +1/+1 and have Vigilance. The +1/+1 is nice, but we like the Vigilance more, actually. Being able to give all of our dudes Vigilance, at least our non-token stuff, makes it very nice with our commander, so that we can attack in with them and then use our commander's ability in the heat of combat to use that second ability to destroy something, or just being able to attack in and not have to worry about the crackback on your opponent's turn because your creatures won't be tapped down. So you can use them to block if you need to. Infernal Tribute, triple black for an enchantment. Pay 2, sacrifice a card in play, which in modern terms means sacrifice a permanent to draw a card, so more ways for us to draw cards. Speaking of drawing cards for Exian Arena, we draw an extra card on our upkeep and lose 1 life. That's a very, very acceptable price to pay for an extra card every turn. Concerted effort, pretty nice enchantment. Essentially what it does is, as long as a creature you control that has one of the keyword abilities listed on this card, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, all of your creatures gain that ability. So if one of your creatures has flying on each player's upkeep, all your creatures gain flying. The same is true for Fear, First Strike, Double Strike, Landwalk, Protection, Trample, and Vigilance. So pretty nice card to have. Cathar's Crusade, uber powerful card. An enchantment for 5. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Not really much else to say about that. Super good. And lastly, Debtor's Knell. A little bit more recursion for us. It is quite expensive, but it does let us rip any creature out of any graveyard on our upkeep and put it onto the board under our control. So those are the enchantments. We're going to take a look at the 3 Planeswalkers that we run before we go over the mana base. So first up we have Elspeth Knight Errant. She's a Knight Errant, and this is a tribal Knight deck, so that alone, basically, I was like, yep, that's going in the deck because it has the word Knight in it. But she's just really good on her own anyway. She creates 1/1 white soldier creature tokens for her first +1 ability, which is more fodder for Knight Captain of Eos and just more chump blockers if we need them. We can also +1 to give a creature +3/+3 and flying until end of turn. And then her ultimate -8, we get an emblem with artifacts, creatures, enchantments, and lands we control are indestructible. So, I mean, if you get that off, you're probably having a good day. Then we have Gideon, ally of Zendikar. He can turn himself into a 5/5 human soldier and smack things in the face. And he's indestructible and gets all damage prevented to him. Then we can pay 0 to put a 2/2 white knight ally creature token onto the battlefield, which is kind of what sealed the deal for it for me in the deck, that it generates knight tokens. Then we can -4, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +1/+1, so it's basically a glorious anthem. Then lastly, Sorin, Grim Nemesis, a 6-cost Planeswalker for 4, a white and a black with 6 loyalty. His +1 basically draws us an extra card, so we can reveal the top card of our deck and put it into our hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converted mana cost, so that's always nice, being able to draw an extra card on top of draining all of our opponents for its converted mana cost. Then his -X, we can kill some creatures with it. Deals X damage to target creature or Planeswalker, and you gain X life. And then -9, put a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield, equal to the highest life total among all players. So that rounds out all of the spells and permanents and such. Lastly, we'll take a look at the mana base. It's pretty basic. We run 36 lands in this deck. Normally I like to run 38, but seeing as we're kind of on the lower end of the curve for a lot of our stuff, I felt like we could get away with 36. So we have an Arch of Araska. Gives us more access to card draw if we have the City's Blessing. We can pay 5 and tap it to draw our card if we do have the City's Blessing, which we get by controlling 10 or more permanents. We have Baron Moore. Kind of a jank card, but it's there because it cycles, so if we need to draw our card in a pinch, we can pay a black and cycle this away to draw our card. Bajuka Bog for that graveyard hate, because, you know, when you're playing against a deck that's abusing its graveyard, which this deck can do if you have Hakan out, it's nice to have access to be able to stop that from happening, so this allows you to do that. Then we have Caves of Koilos, Command Tower, Concealed Courtyard, Emeria the Sky Ruin, lets us resurrect a creature out of our graveyard on our upkeep straight to the battlefield if we control 7 or more planes. Fetid Heath, Godless Shrine, Isolated Chapel, Orzhov Basilica, Path of Ancestry, which is kind of a newer card, I guess. Comes in tapped, but we can tap it to add 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. And then when that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. So, very, very nice. We're going to skip over the basics. We'll do those last. Then we have Scoured Barrens, Secluded Steppe, another cycling land, Shambling Vent, Temple of Silence, Unclaimed Territory. Choose a creature type when it comes in. Then we can tap it for a colorless or for 1 mana of any color, which we can only spend to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. And then Vault of the Archangel, a nice little utility land. We can pay 2, a white and a black, tap it, creatures we control gain Death Touch and Lifelink. Pretty solid. And then to round out the mana base, 10 plains and 8 swamps. So that's about it, guys. That rounds out my Aryel, Knight of Windgrace. Damn, why do I always mess up Windgrace? Like, I'm like, Windgrace? Aryel, Knight of Windgrace, Tribal Knight Commander deck. So I hope you guys did enjoy this deck tech. Honestly, if I can be real for a second, real talk, it feels really good to be making videos like this again for you guys. You know, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, we were gone for over a year. We're sorry. You know, we really do want to apologize for that, but we are going to get back into the swing of things. We do promise you that. Probably 1 video a week right now, maybe more in the future, but we do want to get regular uploads in there. But anyways, if you enjoyed this video, crush that thumbs up button. It really does help out a lot. Leave me some comments in the comment section down below of what you thought of my Tribal Knight Commander deck with Aryel, Knight of Windgrace as the commander. If there are any cards that you would suggest for me to add in. If you think I missed something that would go really good into the deck, leave me some feedback and some, constructive criticism down in the comments if you do have it. I do read them, and I would appreciate the feedback. If you're not already subscribed to Tap and Turn Gaming, go on and crush that subscribe button. Derek and I really do appreciate it. And if you would also like to get notified each and every time we upload a new video here on Tap and Turn Gaming, which again, we are going to get back into the habit of, we do promise that, crush that little bell icon next to the subscription button, and then you will get notifications each and every time we upload a brand new video. So with that said, again, thank you very, very much for watching my deck tech on Aryel, Knight of Windgrace, and I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Jay from Tap and Turn Gaming. We'll see you later.